Welcome back to Murder on Record, where every case is etched in blood and the truth is buried in the fine print. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we dig through the dusty files, the overlooked evidence, and the whispered testimonies to bring long-forgotten crimes back into the light.
Today, we're looking at a really unsettling one from Scottsdale, Arizona.
That's right, the case often called the torso murder. The victim was Ira Pomerantz.
Yeah, a 60-year-old Vietnam vet, owned a bar, and the person at the center of it all, his wife, Valerie Pape.
She was a French-American salon owner. Quite the contrast, isn't it? Beauty industry and, well, this.
A really stark contrast. The core events, they unfolded around January 2000 when Pomerantz's torso was found. Pape was, eventually convicted.
But a conviction doesn't always mean all the questions are answered, does it? In this case, it's got a lot of lingering shadows, a lot of mysteries.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to sort of unpack today. What don't we know? What still feels unresolved based on the records?
Okay, so let's start with the background, the marriage itself. What did the records show about Valerie and Ira?
Well, the picture painted by police logs, witness statements from back then, it's one of significant conflict. We're talking the 80s, the 90s.
The long history.
Long history, frequent police calls to their place in Scottsdale. And Pomerantz himself, he was arrested at least once for domestic violence. So volatility, that's definitely documented.
But the narratives about what happened, they really clash, don't they?
Oh, completely. You have Valerie Pape's allegations. Pretty horrific stuff. Holding guns to her head, throwing knives, supposedly during drunken rages.
Really serious claims. But then
you have Pomerantz's daughters. They strongly deny any physical abuse ever happened. So right there, you've got this fundamental conflict in stories. It's tough to know where the objective truth lies.
it often is in these situations. And there was that incident with the restraining order, right? In late 99.
Yeah, October 1999, court records show she got one. But then, just days later, she withdrew it.
Why? What was the reasoning given?
She reportedly told the authorities she felt safer in jail. Which is, think about that statement.
Feeling safer behind bars than with a restraining order out in the world. That says a lot about her state of mind, doesn't it? Or at least her perception of the danger.
Exactly. It suggests a really profound level of fear, rightly or wrongly. A desperate feeling, perhaps.
Okay, so fast forward just a few months to January 2000, the discovery.
And it was incredibly shocking. Pomerantz's torso, just the torso from the chest down, found in a dumpster. Not even in Scottsdale, but in Mesa.
And witnesses placed Pape right there.
They did. Police reports detail eyewitness accounts, people saying they saw her, Valerie Pape, discarding the bundle from her Jaguar.
Our Jaguar. Wow, so that links her directly to the disposal.
Directly. But what makes this case so haunting, really, is what wasn't found.
His head, his arms, his legs.
Never recovered. And that immediately raises questions, why go to those lengths?
What does that level of dismemberment, that careful disposal of parts of the body, suggest?
Well, it suggests planning. A deliberate effort to maybe hide the victim's identity, hinder the investigation, make it harder to determine cause of death, perhaps.
And the investigation did turn up some key items, didn't it? Like the receipt.
Right, found in her purse. A receipt for a reciprocating saw and blades.
Which lines up perfectly with the autopsy.
Well, it does. The medical examiner found he died from a gunshot to the neck, but then was dismembered using a power tool. So that receipt, it's strong circumstantial evidence tying her to the means of dismemberment.
But the gun itself?
The gun was never found. Another huge unanswered question. Where did it go? Did she dispose of it somewhere else? Did someone else take it? It just disappeared.
Which probably fueled some of the police theories at the time, right? About maybe an accomplice.
It seems likely. They considered it partly because of Pape's relatively small size. Dismemberment is physically demanding work. They wondered if she had help.
And wasn't there a brief look at another unsolved case?
Yeah, the Ron Bianchi murder from '99. Investigative notes show they briefly explored a possible link, but it doesn't seem like that went anywhere concrete based on the available documents. Just a fleeting thought, maybe.
So, okay, she's arrested. What happened legally?
It was a fairly intense period, 2000 to 2002. She was in jail pre-trial for quite a while, and initially, the prosecution was considering the death penalty.
So very serious charges.
Extremely serious. But then, in August 2002, things changed. She took a plea deal.
Pleading guilty to what?
Second-degree murder. And she received a 16-year sentence.
Why take the deal, do you think? avoiding the risk of a death sentence at trial.
That's often a major factor, yeah. It could suggest her defense team felt the evidence, even without the gun or all the remains, was strong enough for a conviction on a higher charge, maybe even first-degree murder. Or perhaps she had her own reasons. It's hard to say for sure.
And her time in prison. Anything notable there?
Reports from after she was incarcerated paint a kind of ordinary picture, oddly enough. She apparently worked as a barber, a beautician within the prison, had very few disciplinary problems.
It's that contrast again, isn't it? The brutality of the crime versus this seemingly mundane prison existence.
It is. It makes you try to reconcile these different facets of a person. Then later there was that issue with France.
Right. She tried to get transferred there in 2006.
An attempt was made, yes, but it was blocked. Pomerantz's daughters objected very strongly.
Understandably, from
Yeah.
their perspective, keeping her within the system where the crime occurred.
Exactly. There are huge emotional factors for victims' families, alongside the legal ones. So the transfer didn't happen. She served her time in Arizona.
It was eventually released and deported.
Yes, released in 2016 and then deported back to France by IC. That closed the chapter on her involvement with the U.S. legal system anyway.
Which brings us back full circle to the core of this deep dive, what still isn't known, the enduring mysteries.
And the biggest one, clearly, is the location of Ira Pomerantz's missing remains. His head, arms, legs. She never told anyone where they are.
That lack of information is just chilling. No closure for the family in that sense.
Absolutely none. It prevents a complete burial, obviously, but it also just leaves this huge nagging question mark. Why the silence? What is she still concealing, if anything? Was someone else involved who she's protecting? We just don't know.
And tied into that are the other missing pieces, the murder weapon, the actual saw blades used.
Gone. Never recovered. It all adds to this sense of an incomplete puzzle.
Then there's the motive. You have these two main competing theories, right?
Very much. On one hand, you have Pape's consistent claim, or at least implication, of self-defense stemming from years of alleged abuse.
If that were true, it changes the narrative dramatically.
But the sheer level of violence, the dismemberment, many find that hard to square with a simple act of self-defense in the heat of the moment. It seems planned, calculated even.
So, the other possibility.
Financial strain. Reports at the time mentioned Pomerantz had lost the lease on his bar. That could have created serious money problems for them.
Could that kind of desperation push someone to violence?
It's certainly a possible factor. Maybe it wasn't just one thing. Maybe it was a combination, the alleged abuse, the financial stress. It could have all boiled over. But again, without Pape explaining her actions, it's speculation.
In this case, really grabbed the headlines back then, the torso murder.
Oh, definitely. The media focused heavily on that contrast. We mentioned the Scottsdale salon owner, this image of glamour juxtaposed with such a gruesome, brutal act.
That kind of sensationalism probably shaped public perception quite a bit.
It almost certainly did. It made the case memorable, notorious even. But it doesn't necessarily get us closer to the full truth.
So ultimately, despite a conviction, despite a sentence served, we're left with significant doubts and unanswered questions.
We really are. Was it self-defense taken to an extreme, horrific conclusion? Was it calculated murder driven by finances or something else entirely? The missing pieces, physical evidence, a clear motive, the full story from Pape herself. They leave this case fundamentally unresolved in many ways.
It's a truly chilling example of how a crime can echo long after the legal proceedings end.
Right.
The fact that parts of Ira Pomerantz are still missing somewhere out there, it leaves a permanent void.
A void, exactly. A constant reminder that the full truth might still be buried, hidden away. It forces you to keep questioning, keep looking at what little evidence we do have.
Until next time, stay curious and keep your eyes on the evidence.